Hey everyone, it's Ruby. So my second song is These Walls. This is my personal favorite song on the album, and it's pretty up there in terms of songs, like all-time favorites. It's just very pretty sounding and flowy, but just like casually listening to it, I never would have like guessed the story that goes behind it and or the messages about abusing power and stuff. So um, after learning all this stuff, I definitely have like more respect for the song and for Kendrick, and made me like it even more. So I'm gonna start. All right, so These Walls takes place in the middle of Act Two, which is Cocooned. It refers to the lines, "Sometimes I did the same, abusing my power full of resentment," in the poem that he recites throughout. And just since, well, my other song was Wesley's Theory, and in Wesley's Theory, there's, as it introduces kind of the album, it says, "Gather your weight, take a deep look inside. Are you really who they idolize?" Which is kind of this period of the album, the Cocoon. There's a lot of introspection. Because at this point, Kendrick is like abusing his fame and the power that comes with it. He's reaping the benefits. In the case of this song, it's sex and revenge, which distract from he has this platform, but he's not using it at this point for a wider good, or like he doesn't feel that he's representing his community well as a voice for them. So this leads to a lot of introspection. The song also won a Grammy. It was one of his 5 Grammy wins at that Grammy Award show. And there's also a music video. The music video follows a slightly different storyline than the song. It features Terry Crews, and there's this guy in jail, and the dude in jail is talking about how it's Kendrick's fault that he's there. And then Terry Crews is saying he's with Kendrick, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go kill this dude." And then they go into this party, and there's this girl dancing on Kendrick, and then they fall through the wall, and then him and Terry Crews perform in some talent show. So it's not really the same story as the song, but I just thought I should mention it. Alright, so basically, this song tells the story of Kendrick at a party, and he ends up having sex with this lady, but it's not an accident. He sought her out and meant to sleep with her for revenge because her boyfriend, her baby daddy, whatever, is in jail for killing one of Kendrick's friends. The friend that was killed, his story is told in Good Kid, Mad City, and this song shows how Kendrick is supposedly getting revenge on his killer by sleeping with his girlfriend. Yeah, I'm sorry to spoil it, but I figured I'd just go ahead and give the storyline now so it's not confusing later. It starts off with the poem. Continuing it, it says, "I remember you as conflicted, misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same." The only new part is "sometimes I did the same." So it's his first time using the I pronoun, taking responsibility and really looking into himself and analyzing his actions and whether he's abusing his power, basically. So, and then it continues on where there's a woman moaning, which is accompanied by some instrumentals. It's really kind of unclear if she's in pain or like pleasure. Probably both, knowing her like confliction, or just probably like pain disguised as pleasure because she's hurting. Because I mean, she's now a single mom and her boyfriend is in jail for a long time. And then it goes on and it says, "If these walls could talk," it starts as a whisper, it's people chanting it, and it gets higher and louder, and then it says sex. So that's supposed to represent it's like a climax, because I mean the song pretty much is about sex. So verse 1 mostly serves to just establish the setting and introduce the female character. By it says, "Shout out to the birthday girls." Kind of implies that it's a party or at a bar, club, whatever. Just she's like the female character is out for the night, and it's talking about how she basically just wants to have sex. But it also says only when you tell her no, and that kind of implies that she was told otherwise, told not to go out. It's like by her boyfriend in jail, but I guess we don't know that yet. It's the first introduction to the woman's conflict. From here, it moves on into the chorus where, I mean, "if these walls could talk" is it's a pretty common, like, well-known phrase people use. But in this instance, the walls are used as a metaphor for a lot of things. It's used as a metaphor for the woman's vagina, for the prison walls holding her boyfriend, the figurative walls of like Compton, the figurative walls holding back black men and women in America, and like the internal walls in Kendrick's mind, causing these conflicts and his abuse of power, his issues with mental illness, depression, that stuff. But of course, in this instance, it's most directly, at this point, applied to the lady's vagina. Because, that's all we really know about the story so far, is just that they're having sex. So at this point, whenever it reads, I can feel your rain when it cries, gold lives inside you. It, implies it's like the rain cries, basically just the lady's, wet. But then whenever it says cries, this also could, it also implies her internal conflict. Like, she's crying for her boyfriend, for her new life, for this betrayal that she's kind of doing for this decision. So, yeah. Verse 2 starts off with this Jesus metaphor. It says, "If these walls could talk, they tell me to swim good. No boat, I float better than he would. No life jacket, I'm not the God of Nazareth, which your flood can be misunderstood." So in the book, they had these lines taken out of context, and they analyzed it, and the author was talking about how, this is talking about how Kendrick, is being likened to Christ by many with his fame. Like, he's just put on this giant pedestal, but, he's saying that he's nowhere near a Christ figure, but he's going to try his best, aka he's going to swim good, to be a model, a representative for his community. And I thought that was pretty smart, but then in the context, it just doesn't really it just doesn't feel like it makes sense at this point, 'cause so far it just seems like it's just talking about sex. So I thought what Dissect said was a lot more on point, where it said basically it's just Kendrick bragging about his sexual abilities, likening himself to Jesus, and doesn't have no condom, aka no life jacket. So I don't know, I thought that made more sense in the context, but I thought I'd mention both. So then it goes on to say, walls telling me they full of pain, resentment, need someone to live in them just to relieve tension. Me, I'm just a tenant. Landlord said these walls vacant more than a minute. So basically this is revealing the woman's need for sex to deal with her larger issue, that she's hurting. She hasn't had sex in a while, because her boyfriend's in jail, but we don't know that yet. Then it goes on to say, these walls are vulnerable, explanation, interior pink color coordinated. I interrogated every nook and cranny. And the book also talked about how this was comparing the brain and the vagina, because it kind of, the description can be applied to the brain too. And I guess if we accept that, then that means that he's understanding her struggle through having sex with her. He understands what she's dealing with, but I also don't really know if I agree with that analysis. So then it goes on to read, it's still amazing. Before they couldn't stand me. These walls want to cry tears. These walls happier when I'm here. These walls never could hold up. Every time I come around, demolition might crush. So this really introduces the conflict for Kendrick, because it says, before they couldn't stand me, meaning that this woman only really desires him because of his fame. That's the only reason that she is having sex with him. So that makes Kendrick's action in having sex with her more questionable, because his fame is almost directly resulted in this sex, which is also revenge. So it's a pretty big abuse of power in that way, especially given the woman's hesitations and conflict as well. So verse 2 is followed by the chorus, and the meaning of the chorus pretty much stays the same. I guess the only change would be the cries being more interpreted as the woman crying for her struggle and conflict at this point, after it being revealed in verse 2, but other than that, it pretty much stays the same as a metaphor for sex. But anyways, it's followed by verse 3, which starts, "If these walls could talk, they tell me to go deep, yelling at me continuously. I can see your defense mechanism is my decision." I thought that was a really interesting line, where it's the woman's defense mechanism is to have sex with Kendrick, but it is Kendrick's decision to have sex with her and to partake in it, because in a sense he's kind of taking advantage of her vulnerability, and he's also obviously using his fame to his advantage to have sex with her. So it is kind of his decision to use that stuff to his advantage or not. But he does take responsibility for it. He says it is his decision. He doesn't shy away from it or really try to make excuses. He does accept the responsibility and accept that it is an abuse of power. It's followed with knock these walls down. That's my religion. This kind of just implies that this is a reoccurring thing. It's not like a one-time thing. It's happened multiple times. Not necessarily with the same woman, but just using his fame to have sex to just for his own advantage, basically. From here, these walls metaphor starts to change a little bit. It says, I resonate in these walls. I don't know how long I can wait in these walls. I've been on the streets too long, looking at you from the outside in. So at this point, the walls is a metaphor basically for Compton and his upbringing. His message, his songs resonate in those walls to that community, to that Compton, yeah. But when while he was there, he felt kind of trapped, like the walls were surrounding him, that there was no like option out. Of course, he made it. Basically, he's an artist now, famous rapper. But now he feels like he's kind of looking at white America, Hollywood, whatever, from the outside in, as well as Compton from the outside in, because he's kind of in this in-between state, kind of how Institutionalized talked about. It goes on to say they sing the same old song about how they walls always the cleanest. I beg to differ, I must have missed him. I'm not involved, I'd rather diss him. At this point, it's talking about kind of like Hollywood or the rap industry, or just basically like famous people, white people, award shows, whatever, how their walls are like the cleanest, whatever. But he's saying that he'd rather insult them, diss them. He doesn't feel involved or like a big part of that community. He feels he resonates more with his like Compton community, basically. Basically, and this kind of idea was institutionalized as well, kind of like, oh, what side is he on? But I mean, I don't want to say it like that because it sounds like it's like, I mean, I don't know, it sounds bad, but I mean, in a sense, he kind of feels he has to take a side, choose one community, and at this point, it's kind of pretty clear that he's choosing his Compton community, and he's not going to go all Hollywood, whatever.
Verse 3 is followed by another round of the chorus, an instrumental break, and then verse 4. And verse 4 starts with, if your walls could talk, they tell you it's too late, you are destiny, accepted your fate. This opening and the whole verse really, it's open to a lot of interpretation because it can be interpreted as the most obviously way is it's Kendrick talking to the prisoner, and the walls are basically the prisoner's prison walls, and his fate is this life sentence he's received. But it kind of comes into question whose fate he's really talking about, and at some points it seems as if he's really looking into himself and his own actions, because by Kendrick abusing his power and misrepresenting his community, not using his platform for good, this could lead to the downfall that he's feared. It's followed by a very pretty hellish picture, pretty hopeless picture about the prisoner or Kendrick, whoever you interpret it as, how no one can help him, even with religious illusions, that it just seems pretty like a godless place. It's followed by, your behavior is Sammy the Bull, like a killer that turned snitch. That's an allusion to this dude that was a famous snitch. He snitched on this crime family, and he only went to jail for 5 years, despite murdering upwards of 19 people. Then it goes on to say, Walls is telling me, you a bitch, you pray for appeals, hoping the warden could afford him. That sentence is so important. So, with this, the warden, most directly, is, the warden of the prison, obviously, but the prisoners kind of see the warden as a deity, relies on them for help. However, this could be a metaphor for Compton, where fate is often predetermined and difficult to escape due to race and financial barriers in place. Or it can even be interpreted as Kendrick's sinning and praying to the god, the warden, to forgive him, but his fate is a result of his actions, his abuse of power. There's also an allusion to his, and it also reveals the what the prisoner actually did whenever it talks about walls telling me you listen to sing about me, retaliation is strong, you even dream about me, you killed my homeboy and God spared your life. So now we find out that the prisoner did kill Kendrick's friend, and it's an allusion to Good Kid Mad City, where Sing About Me played after his friend died in the album. So then it goes on to read, so when you play the song, rewind the first verse, about me abusing my power so you can hurt, about me and her in the shower whenever she horny, about me and her in the after hours of the morning, about her baby daddy currently serving life, and how she think about you until we meet up at night, the only girl that cared about you, and when you asked her, and how she fucking on a famous rapper. So at this point, he's really just rubbing his revenge in the face of the prisoner. Really just straight up admits to the abuse of power. I mean, he even says that it's an abuse of power. He's at this point very, very cocooned. He's using his power for his own benefit. He's not using his platform for a wider good, and as a result, he's going to fall into a depression in the next song. This is clear in the poem, which continues, I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence, sometimes I did the same, abusing my power, full of resentment that turned to a deep depression, found myself screaming in a hotel room. This is a nice bridge to you, which will take place in the hotel room after this whole scenario in these walls took place. While Kendrick is clearly abusing his power in the song and taking advantage of another's vulnerability, at least he recognizes it. He knows that he's misusing his influence. Our protagonist is at he's near, I guess, his lowest point, and he recognizes it. Because, I mean, how can he represent his community and promote racial pride and unity when he is, in this song, he's taking revenge on another black man, which is pretty hypocritical, and is going to, how it's going to distract from his final message. Nevertheless, I think that this low moment is necessary for him to reach his final destination of a butterfly, because now he better understands the temptations of fame and how not to fall into the trap of abusing his power again. And that's all, and I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for the number of times that I said whatever, like, and I was listening back to what I had already recorded, and I absolutely hated it, so I'm so sorry that you had to listen to this.